is Sam Witwer. I'm going to be your moderator today. My name is Brian Young. I write for the official Star Wars website and host a Star Wars podcast called Full of Sith. And I think you guys all know who Sam Witwer is, otherwise he wouldn't be here on a Sunday morning at DragonCon. So I would like Sam, if you want to come on out, and let's get to talking.
DragonCon, right? I'm surprised you guys are up. My God, we were up late last night, weren't we? Yes. How's it going?
So, let's start with Darth Maul.
Yeah.
You guys.
Excellent.
So, Darth Maul, I remember you've told the story about the first time that you got the call that Filoni wanted you to be Darth Maul.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a situation where, well, the Starkiller gig led to Dave calling me up for the Mortis gig, which is the son of Mortis. You guys remember that in Clone Wars? And which was scary enough because I'm showing up and all these wonderful voice actors are completely dialed into their characters, and Matt Lanter knows how to play Anakin, and there's Ashley playing Ahsoka, and everyone knows what they're doing, James Arnold Taylor, and I don't at all. And I'm like arriving there and I'm being told, yeah, and you're gonna be playing the dark side of the Force, so have fun. It's like, wow, I'm gonna blow this. I mean, there's no way this is gonna go well. The dark side of the Force is a theme. I played characters, I've never played a theme before. And I remember in the first day, he had maybe not as many lines as he had in the second and the third episode. So I was sort of getting my feet wet in the character, and I remember being very scared, because I didn't know that it was going that well. And I said to Dave Filoni, I said, are we afraid that this character is going to sound a little bit too much like Starkiller? And Dave Filoni's like, well, Sam, I mean, I think that because the character has a connection to the dark side of the Force, and Starkiller's, he had a connection to the dark side of the Force, you could hear a little bit of Starkiller's voice in there. I think it's fine. And I knew Dave was just pulling that out of his butt. He didn't actually think that through. It was a good answer. And so I went home that day and I was thinking, well, wait, if that's true, and we could hear Starkiller's voice in the Son's voice, we should hear everyone's voice. Anyone that has a connection with the dark side of the Force, we should hear a moment of them in his voice. So I started throwing in little moments of Darth Vader or Darth Maul or the Emperor into the Son's voice. For example, there would be like a line where, he would say like, sister, so I see you brought a friend. That was the line. So you go, sister, so I see you brought a friend. Just a little bit of Vader in the beginning, a little bit of the Emperor at the end. And I started doing that, and Dave Filoni's like, hey Sam, I see what you're doing. I'm like, should I do it less? He's like, no, do it more. And so then that was sort of the way we played the characters. We just always found ways to, because it was, the way that George wanted those episodes is it was all of the events of all the Star Wars movies all mixed up into those 3 episodes and presented to you in different ways. So if someone, if the character had, like usually in the Clone Wars, if your line is join me, well, you want to say it in an original way, in a way that people haven't heard, it's all new Star Wars. But in the Mortis episodes, if your line was join me, you'd better say it as join me. You need to have that Vader thing going on at those moments. Depending on what line you had to dip into different characters. And so after that, Dave was like, so I think there's probably something for you a little bit later in the series. And I'm like, oh, really, like a bounty hunter? He's like, yeah, something like that. Hey, what did you think about the fact that we revealed Darth Maul's alive? And I'm like, I don't think it makes any sense. And then a year later, he calls me up. He's like, hey, so listen, I need Darth Maul. Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. And like, I'm looking at the person I'm in the car with. I'm like, I don't know what to do. What should I say? Yeah, no problem, man. I got this. It was a terrifying call to get, but you do your best to act like you know what you're doing, and then because that's what he needed. He needed to hear that I had it. I got it in the bag, man, no problem, and then I could panic privately.
So I think the thing that's most fascinating about your performances through through all of the Star Wars material, though, is that you're almost first and foremost a fan. And
Not almost.
Okay. Well, I mean, almost first and foremost. You're still an actor and a performer first, I'm assuming. Almost.
With Star Wars, I think I'm a fan first.
Okay. But you're bringing that to the table. You're bringing those to your table reads with the Son. You're bringing that to Darth Maul. I mean, the Jedi Code got into, or the Sith Code got into Clone Wars because you were there and had it, in your brain.
There was an interesting line in the Mortis episodes where the Son is portraying like a kind of a dark Yoda. There was this little creature that's testing Ahsoka to see if she can be talked into joining him, and if she won't, then he's going to corrupt her in a very fast and dirty way, and she'll rot out and she'll die after she does his bidding. But she's all chained up, and there's this little gnome creature that's actually the Son, but no one knows that yet. And he has this line that said, the chains are the easy part. It's what goes on in here that's hard. And so when it came time to do Darth Maul, they had this thing where he was, they say he's mumbling in the corner of the cave, but they never said what he was saying, ever. All of those mumblings, like, they just weren't specific. Katie Lucas wrote a great script, but the mumblings, she was like, he's saying crazy stuff, it's crazy. And one of the things me and Dave talked about with Darth Maul is that, he's like, he told me he wanted Darth Maul to be a little bit Gollum-like, and when I read the script, I was like, I think he's also like Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now. And one of the things that Brando did was, when he was in his own cave, and he was just making up dialogue about the honeybee and just saying all kinds of things, and and so that's kind of what we did with Darth Maul. Is I started making stuff up, and one of the things I think probably subconsciously, because I know how much fans of the expanded universe love to see their stuff made into canon on the show. So I was like, the chains, that line, the chains are the easy part, it's what goes on here that's hard. That would be a cool line for him to say again. And it would be cool to quote the Sith Code on the way into that line, since the Sith Code talks about chains and stuff like that. So that was my reasoning with all that stuff, to make that part of canon, and, what does George know, right?
At what point, was there any point with Dave Filoni, and your Filoni impression is spectacular, actually.
Yeah. Thank you. It's Dave Filoni, supervising director of the Clone Wars. We got some really good...
Now he's in New York.
At what point, was there any point where he was like, Sam, dial it back, you're getting too nerdy?
All the time. And Dave Filoni, he's as much of a nerd as all of us, but then he loves to flip the script and be like, oh, you're such a nerd. And you're like, are you kidding me? I don't have a Plo Koon costume that I built myself outside of my office, but you do, and I think that's awesome. And I will make fun of you for it. I will admire you secretly. Or not so secretly. But yeah, Dave's funny like that. He will try to, we were at the Lucasfilm, we were at the ranch, and we were getting lunch or something. And he just likes to point me out to people as like the biggest nerd in the room. He's like, I just kind of hear him out of the corner of my eye. He's like, no, seriously, he's the biggest nerd. Check this out, check it out, watch this. Hey Sam, what was the nebula that Khan fought Kirk in? I'm like, what, Mutara Nebula? And he's like, see what I'm talking about? By the way, I'm an equal opportunity nerd. Star Trek, Star Wars, it's all good.
And that's a good segue into, you've done Star Trek, and you've done Battlestar Galactica, and you've done pretty much like everything. You did DC Comics. You're going to be facing off again against Matt Lanter in a Justice League animated film as the Ocean Master.
Which I didn't know that Matt Lanter was Aquaman until later.
Really?
Yeah, we tweeted it. He tweeted about it. I'm like, whoa, so that was you? He's like, yeah. So we went back and forth. I love Matt Lanter. He is really, really good. He's really good.
At Celebration 5, it seemed as though there was a bit of a rivalry between you two. Not like with fans. It seemed like the girls responded a little bit more to you.
Stole his girl.
Yeah.
It was really no. There was no real actual.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, but
we only fought once, really. In terms of, and we both beat each other into unconsciousness. Yeah. MMA style, it was blood everywhere. was great.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it was amazing.
But as far as things outside of Star Wars, I mean, obviously you've got you did a pretty impressive body of work for being human. Is there anything specific you'd like to talk about? What maybe you would have liked to do had that show gone on?
You know, we got an opportunity to do just about everything that I could have wanted to do with that character. Sure, you could have done more of this or more of that, but I mean, I'd never got to play a character for 4 years before and develop him and make him change and stuff. And one of the most fun things was we knew that season 4 was going to be it. And so that was when I was like, all right, if there's a funny moment, let's make it funnier. If there's a sad moment, let's make it sadder. Let's not put any restrictions on the performance. I love that. This is the conversation I have with myself. I'm like, all right, Sam, now let's not do anything. I'm like, well, thank you very much. Thank you for the advice. Well, no, listen, I'm not done now. Ridiculous. But yeah, the cool thing about is when you start a show, or when you start showing a character, you're coming out of the starting gate, you're anxious, you want to show what you can do, but you can't do it. You shouldn't do it. You should not go as far or even half as far as you can early on, because it leaves you no place to go later. So the great fun of doing season 4 with Being Human was just going for it, especially that last episode. Just being like, all right, Aiden's upset, great. This is the most upset we're ever going to see him in this scene. Now I get to finally take the gloves off and perform and go for it, which was really satisfying, you know. And the writers had the same idea too. I mean, you know, him bursting through walls going, oh yeah, you know, which was not my idea. I wish it was. Everyone's attributing that to me, like, you came up with that. You ad-libbed that. I'm like, yeah, I ad-libbed that. I ad-libbed breaking through a wall. Now, hey, guys, there's a wall here. I feel like we can do something with this, right? Just break through it. So yeah, you know, it was the writers had the same idea, that by the end of it, he should be as human as we've ever seen him. And that was fun to finally bring him there, because we started him in a very, you know, holding his cards close to his chest place. And then to have him open up over the 4 years, I think was fun.
You've done a lot of series where you do, you'll do voice work or video games. You do lots of video game work. Obviously, everyone is probably familiar with The Force Unleashed. Or not, maybe you're not.
That guy. That guy and that guy. Why are you guys not sitting together? Have you guys met, by the way? Wait, stand up. Both of you two stand up. Hold on. Face off, both of you. Exactly like that. I'm getting a picture.
Yeah, come on over here.
You guys do it up front here so everyone can see? Like right over here?
This is great.
Photo op, guys.
DragonCon's on his face.
Now also, I want to see give me your idle animations, please.
And there wasn't a single Maris Brood here in the audience?
There's a Maris Brood, come on! There was a Maris Brood last year. Was there? Yeah. Well done. I'm here all the time.
So, that Force Unleashed thing.
Yeah, the Force Unleashed? What is that?
It's a game, I hear. So you did voices, obviously, for Starkiller, but you also did Palpatine.
I did Palpatine.
You've done Palpatine for a few things.
For a few things, I've done Palpatine, yes. Yes, I have. Yeah, the thing with Palpatine, there was a friend who was sick, and I was trying to cheer her up. And so I would do these little skits. I would record myself doing like scenes from movies, but then something goes horribly wrong, you know? Like, it'd be like, the scene from the beginning of Return of the Jedi. It'd be like, the Emperor does not share your optimistic appraisal of the situation, but he asks the impossible. I need more men. Then perhaps you could tell him when he arrives. The Emperor's coming here? That is correct, Commander, and he is most displeased with your apparent lack of vision. We should double our efforts. I hope so, Commander, for your sake. The Emperor is not his forgiving. Oops. So I would do these sketches where you just play out the scene as normal, but then something happens. Something wrong happens that they cut out of the movie. They're like, oh, we don't need that actually. We don't need that movie. There was a whole like sketch where Yoda is, like an expanded scene of Yoda dying in Return of the Jedi, talking about how he wishes he dated more.
The medal was right there.
Yeah, I know. And there was even a moment where, is Darth Vader my father? Rest I need. Yes, rest. Master, I must know. Your father he is. Told you, did he? Yes. That guy. He's just getting really bitter about the whole thing. Anyway, so I would do sketches like that. And she was a Star Wars fan, so I did The Emperor every now and then. And I did it poorly, but there was something there. There was something that I was locking into that I could kind of do. And so when it came time to do Force Unleashed, we were all sitting there, and we were doing table reads and stuff, a few of them. And I asked Hayden Blackman, I'm like, I know we're getting Jimmy Smits to play Bail Organa again. Are we getting Ian McDermott to play the Emperor? And he goes, I don't think we are. And I'm like, all right. Also, let's get me to play the Emperor, in addition. And he goes, well, that's ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, but I want to do it though. And he's like, okay, whatever. And so David Collins, the lead sound designer, he goes, okay, listen, there's a read-through tomorrow. Don't prepare the Emperor. Don't do it at the read-through, because what I want to do is we'll record it and I'll process it and pitch it down and stuff like that. And that way you'll have the best chance of getting the gig. And then I'm at the read-through, and Hayden, being the sort of football coach of The Force Unleashed, the writer also, he wrote it. In the middle of the read-through, the Emperor's coming up, and he's like, all right, Sam, go ahead. No, you're up, go for it. No, you can do the Emperor, go for it, please. And I'm looking at David Collins, I didn't prepare this, and he's like, And so I kind of launched into it, and it was, what was the Emperor's first line in The Force Unleashed? Okay, I think it was this.
You have forgotten your place, Lord Vader, by taking this boy as your apprentice. You have betrayed me. Now you will kill him, or I will destroy you both.
So I started doing that, and everyone in the room was like, well, okay, all right. I couldn't do it as well as I can do it now. I'm a lot better at it now, but back then it was sort of my first attempt at the Emperor. So if you play The Force Unleashed, that's me muddling through it. There was one line that I thought was great, because the Emperor is actually really funny, when things are going his way,
Oh, I'm afraid that let the shield be quite operational.
He's a funny guy. So there was a line where he's got all the people that are plotting against him. He's got Bail Organa and all these people all lined up, and General Coda. And the line was, you are all traitors to the Empire. You will be interrogated, tortured. You will give me the names of your friends and your allies. And then you will die. And I did that, and I got a laugh, and I was like, I think that needs a laugh. The Emperor's, he's like that. He's a silly guy. You know, he's fighting Yoda. He's like, it's great. Oh my God, this is great. So that's how I got the Emperor gig, being an idiot.
So talking about the Yoda fight, talking about Star Wars in general, when you were on my podcast, we talked a lot about the proper viewing order for the Star Wars movies, and yeah, I'd like to talk. I'd like you to talk about the 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6 order.
The proper viewing order for Star Wars. Yeah,
indeed,
of course.
I think you guys want to hear about that, right?
Yeah, you guys probably already know, right? Don't you?
Yeah.
Don't you? A little bit?
Fine, we don't need to talk about it then.
All right, let's talk about this.
Okay.
Well, okay, look, if you're going to take all of Star Wars, right, and you're like starting a kid out on it, let's say, starting with Clone Wars, like do that. Get them into the Clone Wars. You don't have to show them all of it, but show them enough of it to where they're familiar with that world. At that point, Anakin Skywalker is their hero, right? Then you start with Episode 4. There is no Star Wars movie that introduces you to that world better than Episode 4. It's the only Star Wars movie that has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's an amazing film. When you get your hands on a lightsaber, you're not fighting someone with it. Luke gets to wave it around and be like, "Whoa, golly, what is this?" You know, and that's we're seeing the movie through his eyes, so that's our first experience with that. And Obi-Wan does sort of lay things out, and tell you about the Force, and it surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the galaxy together. And if you start your kids out on Clone Wars before Episode 4, then he goes, well, Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father. And at that point, kids are like, what? Our hero, Anakin Skywalker, we know that Luke is his son, but this guy, Darth Vader, killed him? Well, let's go get that guy. Let's go. Right now, let's destroy him. And so in the next movie, spoiler alert, when it's revealed who Darth Vader is.
What?
Sorry, guys. When it's revealed who he is, that is a shock for kids to find out that this guy that they've been after, who killed their hero, is actually the same guy as their hero. No. And it's and there's also a really interesting cliffhanger. There's a cliffhanger with the Darth Vader, "I am your father." But there's also a cliffhanger with Yoda saying, there is another Skywalker. So then at that point, you go Godfather 2, do a Godfather 2 style flashback, and you go back to 1, 2, and 3. And the interesting thing about 3 is that the reveal, I did this test with Dave Gentoli, the lead of a show called Grimm. He'd never seen any Star Wars, so this is the way I showed it to him. I didn't show him Clone Wars because we didn't have time. But when we were watching that movie, first of all, the whole Darth Vader, "I am your father" thing, he didn't necessarily buy into it. He didn't know what to make of that. He's like, well, yeah, but he's a jerk. He's a dick. He's probably lying. I don't know. He's wearing a mask. He dresses like a guy who goes to goth clubs. I don't know this guy. I will not trust him. But he had a bad feeling about it. He was watching Episode 3, and we just showed him 3. We didn't have time to do 1 and 2. And he was watching it going, oh boy, I think this Anakin guy really is going to become Darth Vader. This is bad, this is bad. And then he's watching the Emperor just wipe the floor with everyone. He's watching Yoda fail. He's watching all these things happen. And so finally, at the end, when all hope is lost, he's watching this scene where Padme's giving birth, and she gives birth to Luke. And he's like, yeah, Luke, I've been expecting this all movie. She's been pregnant. Gives birth to Luke. And they say, twins. And he goes, twins? And he's like, pause. He's like, there is another? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. So we're watching the thing, Vader's getting built, she's going through labor, and finally she's about to say it, and he goes, is it Leia? And he's like, yes! And he started freaking out. And he was really excited by that revelation. And you know, after we'd seen Anakin go to the dark side, all this stuff, this was really exciting stuff, and to come out of the movie. And then when you hit Return of the Jedi from Revenge of the Sith, you are being reintroduced to all the characters one at a time, as if you've been away from them for a long time. It's kind of perfect, right? And there's all these things that remind you of what you've seen. You know, Yoda saying, you know, hey, do not underestimate the power of that serious badass, because he, oh my God. Before you become a Jedi, just get a little bit of tail, okay? Seriously, it's very so he was, at that point, you know, when he's talking about the Emperor and all this stuff, he's like, oh yeah, we're screwed. And also Luke, when Luke is introduced, Luke is behaving like Anakin. He's dressed like Anakin, he's choking out pig guards, he's being kind of a dick, you know, telling Jabba he's gonna die and all that stuff. So he was very worried about Luke. He thought Luke could definitely turn to the dark side, because he just saw it happen. And then, later on in the movie, there's that whole scene where Ben's like, the other he spoke of is your twin sister, and then let me explain to you all this stuff. And Dave's just sitting there watching, going, yeah, totally, twin sister. Whoa, wait, pause. Is this how you guys found out? Because this is lame. Are you kidding me? He just tells you about it? Lame. I saw the birth in the middle of all this dramatic action. You know, trust me, it was very dramatic. It was really cool. Wait about 25 years. It's a really cool scene. By the end of it, when the Emperor is shooting lightning at Luke, you know, last time, if you follow this order, the audience, the last time they saw that lightning was when everything went wrong with, you know, with Anakin and the Emperor and Mace Windu. And so Dave was sitting there like, oh, come on, man, come on, you know, and he was just sitting there like balling up his fists, like just really waiting for Vader to step it up. And when Vader did, huge moment for Dave. Much bigger for him than it would have been if he just watched the original trilogy in order. Huge moment. And then by the end, when he's Anakin again, and that was very rewarding for Dave. Dave was like, that's awesome. This is really cool. And we had a whole talk, and he's like, okay, I get it. I get why people like this Star Wars thing. It's really well done. So that's the way to do it. You know, with Dave Gentoli, we did 4, 5, 3, and 6. That works. If you want to go a little bit more hardcore, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. And if you want to go super hardcore, you go Clone Wars, not all of it, but a lot of it. Then 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. You can even throw Clone Wars somewhere in there later on if you want. I mean, there's endless ways that you can mix this up and present it to people. But the thing that you want to do is preserve those surprises. You really want to preserve, you know, I am your father. That's the key thing you want to protect. There are other ways to, you know, if you go 4, 5, 3, and 6, the surprise of who Yoda is still preserved. If you don't do Clone Wars, Yoda is a big surprise, still. You know, he's this Muppet? That's the Jedi Master? Okay, all right. Weird. So.
I've actually, after you kind of laid that out for me, I showed a couple of people in that 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6 order, and it bears out. It works, and I think in a lot of the same ways.
Yeah. Well, you know, you can't avoid the order by which things were made, because when we see Sand People, hi, how are you? It's good to see you again. When we see Sand People in Episode 4, they're terrifying. They're like, you know, and they're scary. And then but if we watch Episode 1 first, it's a comedic beat where they're sniping people on the pod race. They're going, so, you know what I mean? Like, you want Sand People to be scary first, then a punchline. And then you want them to torture your mother. It works. It's a word. But yeah, you have to observe those things. But the big surprise you must preserve at all costs is I am your father. That's the one. That's the one.
So we've got one more question, and then we'll go out to questions from the audience. So I saw on Twitter you talking back and forth with some people about getting Pablo Hidalgo to game master some role-playing game sessions with you guys playing Star Wars. I'm wondering if that's happened or how that went.
Yeah, it happened, but I game mastered it.
You game mastered it?
Yeah. Why would you need Pablo Hidalgo to game master it? What, is he like on the story team or something?
Okay.
He is on the story team, guys. He actually knows exactly what's happening in episode 7 and 8 and all that, and I don't. So, but yeah, we had a whole bunch of people, some Lucasfilm people, some former Lucasfilm people, and we totally gamed. It was really fun.
Okay, so since you were the game master, I was going to ask you about what your character was, but what were the paces you put people through?
Just torture, man.
Torture.
Yeah. No, it was the beginner box set for Edge of the Empire. We ran through that. It was a lot of fun. Really, really fun. We had Pablo Hidalgo, Claire Grant, who's Seth Green's wife, David Collins, formerly of Lucasfilm, but he played, Proxy in The Force Unleashed, and he was the lead sound on Force Unleashed and many other games. Naomi Kyle from IGN, and who am I missing? Me? I think I was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got together. We were gonna get Kyle Newman too, but he had baby disaster to clean up.
So presumably that was fun.
It was really fun. It was really fun. It was David Collins' first time playing anything like that. So, and he really got into it. He really went for it. So if you guys are into that kind of thing, pick up the FFG stuff. It's really, really good. It feels like a cross between the D20 and the West End game stuff from back in the day.
So if you guys want to ask questions, why don't you come up to the middle here? We'll have a microphone.
By the way, something that's really cool about those old role-playing game books, for any of you people who are not fans of RPGs, go on eBay and find the old West End Games books, because you're going to find so much source material that leaks into the prequels, that leaks into other stuff. Some of it is not relevant anymore, but tons of it still fits. I knew all about who Palpatine was in 1988 and how he became the Chancellor and all this stuff. Like, that was all in those source books. And it was, it wasn't in the specificity that you see in the prequels. We didn't know exactly how he did it, but we knew the broad strokes. There was a lot of really cool stuff. And in fact, in Dave Filoni's new show, Rebels, they're using the ISB, which first showed up in a West End Games book. They're using the Inquisitors, which first showed up in a West End Game book. Like, those source books for the RPG were the beginning of the expanded universe. I know everyone thinks it's the Timothy Zahn books. It wasn't. Those predated the Timothy Zahn books, and in fact, so much stuff in the Timothy Zahn books is straight from the RPG books. They gave him those books as reference. So if you want to know where all that stuff came from, there's vehicles in those books, pictures of vehicles that showed up in episode 3, some 30, 35 years later. Crazy.
There's
My math is wrong. Is that 35 years? What is it? What?
It was like...
What year?
15 years.
Okay, 15 years. 47 years. By my reckoning.
If you guys are interested in that also, I actually wrote a piece for Star Wars Insider maybe 6-7 months ago that documents all of that. Yeah. So if there are any questions... You need to
Okay. When they were preparing you, or preparing the Force Unleashed, how did they transfer your face and into the game format?
A voodoo ritual where they stole my soul. That was the best technology you could offer at the time, voodoo. No, we were at ILM, which was really fun for me because I've always wanted to visit ILM since I was a kid. So there we were at ILM, and they were scanning me in. They had a thing called Clone Cam, which you just make a bunch of shapes with your face. You go, all this the weird stuff. And it teaches the computer how your face works so that they can create a duplicate and they don't need you anymore. But yeah, it was industrial light magic. They're all much better at these things now than were then. But yeah, there are, head scans of me. I mean, so much of like the art. For example, you guys know that Force Unleashed image where Starkiller's got the lightsabers like this, he's like that. I never posed for that. That's the computer image, but it's undeniably me. I've seen even photorealistic pictures that they put out. I'm like, when did we do that? Is that a photograph? They're like, no, that's the computer model. I'm like, oh. Do I owe you any money for royalties? Using my own face? I mean,
Does that ever worry you? Is it in your contract that if 30 years from now they were like, let's make a Force Unleashed movie, where's Sam? Hey, he's a little old. We've got all of his information stored. We'll just bring him in.
Now I'm worried. This is the worst. I don't know. I know that they own Starkiller's likeness, and I happen to look a lot like the guy, so I don't know how that works. But they made action figures of me, so can't complain.
Okay, next question.
Hi. So I started watching you and being human, but then I fell in love with you during Clone Wars, and I kind of wanted to know which was harder, the voice acting or the screen acting, and then do you really like broody characters?
Do I like doing characters?
Broody. Do you really like broody characters?
Like, do you like doing characters? Like, yeah, I do it for a living.
Not much, but...
Brooding characters. You know, I think I get hired for those because I was, well, I have a big brooding Cro-Magnon brow from a time when everyone brooded because the dinosaurs were after them. Newsflash, guys, dinosaurs and man fought a war. And Grimlock helped us win. Right? So, what were we talking about? Yeah, the voice versus camera. You get a lot less bruises when you do voiceover work. Being human, for example, there are a lot of stunts and stuff like that. I really do. I think I slightly prefer on camera because you have more tools at your disposal. But the thing about voiceover is that you don't have to worry about how you look. You just kind of show up and look like an idiot. And so long as it sounds right, it'll work. I mean, for Being Human, what was interesting was in season 1 particularly, or the beginning of season 1, I made a very conscious choice to just give you this, to be more expressive in the eyes, and to not necessarily be that expressive, vocally. I'm just gonna talk like this a lot and blah blah, but let it be all here. It's not something you can get away with in voiceover. That would be a very bad performance. The character just gonna talk like this. That's not. No one wants that. So it is a different discipline a little bit. You have to. There's things you need to observe that you don't necessarily need to observe when you're on camera. But what's interesting about Clone Wars, having now done more voiceover in different areas with different people, I like the way Clone Wars does it best. And I mean that not because I'm a Star Wars fan, but because they know what my job is. And so, for example, there'd be a Darth Maul line, right? I'm surprised you could have forgotten me so easily. And I might go, I am surprised you could have forgotten me so easily. And notice those breaths that I'm throwing in, the hissing and all that stuff. I've done that type of thing for other characters, not necessarily hissing, but like a breath in between lines, stuff like that. Some movement, that you can hear in the voice. And they'd go, yeah, great, can we get it clean? I'm like, what do you mean clean? They're like, oh, just take that breath out and make that little beat where you took a sigh. And that's disappointing. It's like, so the character, just because he's animated, he can't sigh? Really? Well, no, but our animators wanted to do a thing. And it's like, funny, because on Clone Wars, they wanted all of that. My character would be like, yes, my master. They wanted to build in that breath into the animation. They wanted him, if I was surprised you could have forgotten me so easily. They wanted to have his teeth grit and him to breathe in through his teeth. They wanted all of those things. And that's why Clone Wars, when you watch those characters, it feels like those voices belong to those images. That character is creating that voice, rather than on some other animated stuff, it just feels like sometimes like it's an animated image and the voice happens to be in lip sync with it. Clone Wars, it felt like those characters were there. And another thing they did is they had the actors in the room together, which not everyone does. And it's more expensive, it's harder to schedule, but that's the way they do it, because they want those performances to feel real. They want them to feel physical. They want them to feel like the characters are going through something. So that's why I liked working on Clone Wars the best, because that's the aesthetic that Dave Filoni brought to it.
Speaking of Clone Wars really quickly, they didn't exactly leave Darth Maul in the best of places on the show. And I'm wondering if you read the comic book based on the scripts.
I've read one of them, I haven't read the rest of them yet. I knew a little bit about that story, and I knew about stuff later on after that. And I also know, no one's going to get mad at me for saying this, I know a little bit about how they wanted to end the series, their idea of the finale, and what Darth Maul's role would play in that. Having said that, you know, those Yoda episodes are a great way to end Clone Wars. It's a pretty damn good ending to the series. But yeah, I knew about some long-term plans for Maul.
Well, I think kind of the point I'm getting at with those comics, I read those comics, and it was almost impossible to divorce the dialogue being spoken from Maul from your interpretation, knowing it was a Clone Wars story.
Nice. I agree with that.
I don't know if anybody else. Have any of you guys even read those comics, the Son of Dathomir comics? Yeah. They're really good. You guys aren't awake yet. Next question.
So, let's see. You've been Starkiller, you've been Darth Maul, you've been a vampire, now you're going to be Aquaman's nemesis. Are you going to take a role anytime soon where you're just being human?
You know what's funny is it's just these are the types of things that go for some reason. I did. Well, I shouldn't tell you that. Anyway, I was offered a very good role on a very, very popular show before the show was a thing, right? And I couldn't take it because I was busy doing a pilot. It was a family drama for CBS that didn't go. I was just a guy, you know, and I've done other movies where, you know, I played like a 1920s Bureau of Investigations agent and stuff like that, like normal people. But for whatever reason, the things that I've done that have been the most successful, and perhaps even the best, and the things that people have been paying attention to have been these genre things. So it's an interesting thing. I haven't designed it that way. I'm a huge fan of this stuff, so when people hire me, they have some confidence that I'll be able to do the job because I've already thought about those types of things. But I have done other things, and they've just, luck of the draw, like not been as good as I'd hoped. And you know, like I would be one character, and just, you know, something would happen and the editing would be bad. And you're like, well, and a great script and great cast, but like the editing was wrong. Oh man, that's too bad. You know, or like it's an interesting thing. But I've been hired for a lot of different things. That family drama, that pilot was great, but it wasn't CSI, and CBS does that. And that was the big hurdle for that. They're like, we love this. You know, actually, this is not what we do. I was like, yeah, we know. Why did you make us a pilot? Couldn't we have gone somewhere else? Like, it was a little frustrating. And that's actually where I met Dave Gentoli. He played my brother on that pilot. So, you know, here we were doing a family drama for, you know, family drama in New York. We weren't solving any crimes, and CBS was like, we don't know what to do with this. But it made them cry. The execs at CBS cried, so we did that.
That's something. Next question, please.
Hi, Sam. First, I want to thank you for coming to the con and being one of the nicest and most approachable and one of us guests at the convention. If it's permissible to go slightly off topic, I actually have kind of a probably outdated question. It's a Smallville question.
Sure.
I had that on my list.
And thank you, by the way, for Davis Bloom and bringing kind of a two-dimensional comic book character such humanity and making it interesting. But I think a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, somebody asked you how you played Davis, knowing where he was going to go, and you said you played him not as somebody who thought he was evil, but thought he was a good person, and the evil just kind of happened to him. And one of the few things that disappointed me in Smallville's history was how that character resolved, because I thought, okay, well now they're going to split, and Davis is going to be good, and Doomsday is going to be all monster. And one of the first things that Davis does is something awful. And I just wondered if you thought in the story arc of season 8, if you felt like you were being asked to betray what you had been trying to do with that character all season.
Wow.
And a small,
You know.
and a small aside at the end, I was wondering if I could have your name later.
Yes.
Yeah, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Really good question. Okay, so first, it's hilarious because as you were saying, hey, thank you for Davis Bloom, I was thinking, okay, the first thing I'm going to say is, no, thank the writers because they created a really great concept and wrote it the way that they did, and you know, I really appreciated that. And no sooner was I thinking about thanking the writers, now I must sell them down the river because of the second part of that question. Television is very hard. All of this is very hard. Movies are hard. Video games are hard. Animated stuff is really hard. Television is hard because it's like, it's never, they thought season 8 was going to be the last season of Smallville. That was the plan. They lost Michael Rosenbaum, they lost Kristen. And so they're like, yeah, well, we're Smallville is now finishing up. We're done. You know, we're losing steam. And then they brought Davis on, they brought Tess Mercer on, and they started doing their thing with new showrunners, new writers, and the ratings went up. And that's when they're like, well, damn it, actually we could do all the way to season 10 now. Like, we're back, you know, we've got steam back, is what the company or the network or whoever felt about Smallville at that point. It reinvigorated it. So the thing I felt about how Davis Bloom, this is the thing with Clone Wars. When we did Darth Maul, you want to know how much in advance me and Dave Filoni talked about the whole arc of the story? Months. Months. We all got together, we talked through that story for hours so that I could think about how I wanted to portray it when we started recording those episodes months later. That's when that's when you know someone really understands the actor's job. The more information you feed an actor, really put it on them. They did the best they could with what they were given, and frankly, delivered a really good season of television, and brought the show back from the dead, for God's sake. So, you know, yes, I sold them on the river, and now I'm buying them. Thank you, but for less money than I sold them for, so I lost money on the deal. Bad business decision. So they did a wonderful job. Now, Being Human was interesting. Those writers, again, they didn't really understand the actor's job. Like, you should really tell an actor where it's going. And writers tend to sometimes be skeptical and think, well, no, but if I tell you, then you're going to sort of, telegraph it, and then the audience is going to know. I mean, your character wouldn't know this, so then, the character doesn't know where he's going, so we just want to see that. And it's like, I'm not going to telegraph it, dude. I'm going to actually obscure it. I'm going to help you tell that story. And there were things in Being Human that we should have, in the first season, been aware of. For example, one character had an injury on her stomach. And there's an earlier episode where she's trying to get physically intimate with Josh, and he's not having it. And she didn't know that she had this scar on her stomach. And then 2 episodes later, they're in the same situation. He goes, wait, I have to show you this. And it's this very vulnerable moment where she shows him the scar. And she was angry. She's like, if I knew I had this scar, I would have played that earlier moment differently. I wouldn't have been trying to tear my clothes off. And it's those types of things that, our writers learn very quickly. They're like, the actors are our allies, and we should all work together to tell this story. But it's very frustrating when you see writers that think, no, you just put the lines out there. Say them. I wrote that, do that. That's not how it works. Not if you want it to be really good. If you really want it to be good, you have to give the actor as much information as possible. And if you've hired the right guy or girl, and they know what they're doing, they'll get it right. And the Being Human writers, it was just an experience thing. They learned it immediately. And talk about writers who were like moving targets and being able to adapt and, being told different things from the network and being able to still turn out scripts that worked and were thematically relevant. They were unbelievable. And the thing is that writers, Smallville, Being Human, all these things, Clone Wars, the actors get all the credit, but frankly, the writers are the ones that deserve it. They're amazing. There are a lot of ad-libs on Being Human or Clone Wars and this and that. So, but those ad-libs are all in support of what we've already read on the page. So when the writing is good, it sparks everyone's imagination, and then, if people are allowed to do their job, you can get something really, really great. Something that a director said to me is that anytime you're doing a movie or a TV show or an animated show, you must make sure that what it is that you shoot is better than what's on the page. It has to be better. Otherwise, why not just sell the script to someone, or make a novel, write a book and give it to someone? But if you're bringing all these people in, you're going to waste everyone's time to make this. It better be better than what's on the script. So.
After Ian Abercrombie passed away in 2012, were you ever considered for the role of Palpatine before Tim Curry? And is there a chance that you may be him in Rebels at some point?
I may have been considered. And as far as Rebels, you know, who knows? Who knows? I love those guys. I've seen the show. It's an amazing, amazing show. I would love to do it. I thought Tim Curry did an amazing job in season 6. It didn't sound like Ian Abercrombie or Ian McDermott, but boy, I felt like it was the character. You know what I mean? It felt like the character. That whole thing in season Sidious, that whole thing. Like, wow, Tim Curry, damn. So you know, we'll see. But I would certainly love to go to work for Rebels. It's a really good show. It's a really good show. I'm so proud of those guys. You know, because for them to lose Clone Wars was a big blow to everyone's morale. And I'm probably saying more than I probably should by saying that. But like, you know, yeah, I mean, you have to give up a project. It's just it's a big thing. And Rebels has seemed to reinvigorate everyone's morale because that same team went on to do Rebels, and they didn't know what they were dealing with at first. So the budget wasn't exactly the same and all this stuff. And finally, next thing you know, they're like, we're very happy doing this. And I've seen the show, and I'm very happy they are doing it the way that they're doing it, because it's a very engaging, very, very focused, awesome show. So, and the cool thing is, by getting the same team, you know, there's this whole thing of like, oh, there's all these Clone Wars episodes they never made. It's like, you know, these story ideas. And now they're making another show that takes place after that show. And you could take all these different story ideas and just throw them in Rebels. You know, that's the cool thing. And you know that that's going to happen. So when people say, well, now that they're not making Clone Wars, can you tell us what happened? I'm like, no, I can't, because it might happen. You know, it could happen in Rebels. You never know. So.
Rebels was really good. So we've got a time for about 2 more questions.
I was wondering, what is the most challenging of your darker roles? Doomsday, Starkiller, or Darth Maul?
Doomsday, Starkiller, or Darth Maul? You know, I think, you know, they were challenging for different reasons. Starkiller was challenging because we were trying to create a character that felt like he's from the 70s, basically. And I mean that, like, you know, watch 70s movies and figure out when Star Wars was made, and then also figure out what Star Wars was emulating, which was 1940s movies, and figure out why George Lucas would always say on the set of the original Star Wars, yeah, do it again, but faster, more intense. Sure, you're fired. So we were trying to duplicate the Luke, Han, and Leia feel of the originals, because it was closer to the original trilogy in the timeline. So that was a challenge. In terms of the dark stuff, doing the dark stuff, Darth Maul was the challenge, because it was like all that mumbling he did in the cave. It's a weird thing to walk into a studio, and there's no dialogue for these mumblings, and they go, and I'm just like, all right, well, I'm just going to record, just hit record, and I'm just going to do some weird stuff. And they're like, yeah, go for it. And then to, you know, drive yourself into this frenzy, try to make yourself weep and all this crazy stuff, and laughing the whole time. It was a bizarre thing. And I remember after the first take, huge silence. And I'm looking out, there's a window. You can't hear what they're saying, but they're all talking. And I just had gone on a rant for about 2 minutes, you know. And silence, silence, silence. And then finally Dave Filoni leans over, he goes, oh, sorry, Sam, we were just discussing my wisdom in hiring you. It's like, all right, thank God, because I thought they hated it. It's a very exposing place to be to go that far.
Are you going to audition for Star Wars Episode 8 and 9?
I nearly auditioned for Star Wars Episode 7, and right before I was about to go in, they changed the parameters of that character so that I wasn't right for that character anymore. My goodness, I would love to go in for 8 and 9. My relationship with Lucasfilm is still strong, so they definitely know where to find me. But there's got to be a part that I'm right for, you know? unfortunately, you can't just go in there and be like, I'd like to be in Star Wars, please. let me.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, there you go. That's what I do with Battlestar Galactica, though, and it worked. That was weird. I saw the miniseries, and like, I'd like to be in Battlestar Galactica, please. They're like, you're in. I'm like, what? But I don't want to move to Vancouver. What?
Hi. Kind of off-topic question, but I wanted to ask you about the one scene that you had in The Walking Dead in the first season, and if you wish you had another opportunity to go back to that show.
You know, I'm not going to go full on into it because last time I was at DragonCon I did, and I got in a lot of trouble. That was actually an interview that I did here. If you Google Sam Witwer and Walking Dead, you're going to read and see more than you ever wanted to know. But basically, long story short, is I was the tank soldier in Walking Dead, and that was because drank Farabont.
Frank Darabont.
Was and is a very, very close friend of mine. And so the idea that we discussed was, he's like, hey, want to be the zombie in the tank in The Walking Dead? He wanted me to do another role that was bigger, and I couldn't do it. But then he's like, oh, well then you can be the tank zombie. And I'm like, awesome. Way less lines for the tank zombie. What are you talking about, Frank? Come on. I'm going to be a zombie? And he's like, wouldn't it be fun? I'm like, I'll do it if you want me to do it. And he's like, yeah, but here's what I want to do. I want to do a prequel episode where we're going to introduce you as the lead, like a Twilight Zone episode. It's going to be about the fall of Atlanta. It's going to be about these soldiers, like Black Hawk Down. You're going to be the lead of that episode, like a mini little thing. And we're going to follow you through it, and all this bad stuff's going to happen. We're going to introduce some characters that are going to show up in season 2 that you're going to bump into. And then you're going to get bit, you're going to be dying, you're going to crawl into a tank, you're going to think about blowing yourself up with a grenade, you're going to put the grenade down. Then we're going to time-lapse you, and you will rot, and then we're going to reshoot that scene with Rick coming into the tank and blowing your head off and grabbing that grenade, which saves them later. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this. But then things went down with, you know, AMC and Frank, and so that idea died. So, you know, if you want to know more about that, or what the idea specifically was, Frank wrote about it on 8 and Cool News and stuff like that. You can read all you want. So yeah, that's how that went. I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's about all we have time for. I want to thank you very much, Sam, for talking.
Thank you. Thanks for waking up, guys. Thank you for getting up early on Sunday to come and see me. Thanks.